Tuesday was a long day for Jesus, according to Mark. The report contained in Mark chapters 11:27 through 13:37 gives the details. The events happened in the open-air courts and porticos of the temple platform, brimming with pilgrims celebrating Passover. Teachers often taught in that open-air setting. The day began with several challenges by temple authorities and their associates. All, except one interrogator, meant to trap Jesus by posing questions with answers that would either get him in trouble with the government or upset the crowds gathered around him. The authorities asked about Jesus' authority, about land ownership, about taxation, and about life after death. Jesus countered each question with a question, and then an answer that really didn't address the question. Skillfully, Jesus skirted the questions while stating his own provocative position, which frankly takes some study to fully understand. A theme began to emerge in Jesus' answers, though, that God is above all else in our lives, even above the government and the church. In addition, Jesus stated that God is the God of the living, and that God has a kingdom, both present now and into the future. Then, contrary to Matthew's gospel, Mark highlighted one scribe who appreciated Jesus' answers and asked, which commandment is the first of all? Most of us know this well-known passage in Mark 12:28 through 31. Jesus answered, the first is, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these. Then the scribe repeated what Jesus said, but added something very insightful. Continuing in verses 32 and 33, then the scribe said to him, you are right, teacher. You have truly said that he is one, and besides him there is no other, and to love him with all the heart, and with all the understanding, and with all the strength, and to love one's neighbor as oneself. This is much more important than all whole burnt offerings and sacrifices. Burnt offerings and sacrifices were done in the temple. So loving God according to the scribe is more important than the church and what happens there. Jesus poignantly replied, you are not far from the kingdom of God. Loving God and loving our neighbor is living within the realm of God. As Jesus left the temple, one of his disciples commented about the massiveness of the stones and buildings. Jesus replied in Mark 13:2, do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left here upon another. All will be thrown down. Then Jesus, Peter, James, John, and Andrew apparently made their journey down the hill, into the valley, up the other side, and sat on the Mount of Olives, looking across at the city of Jerusalem. The disciples asked him privately when the temple would be destroyed. What followed is commonly called the Little Apocalypse in Mark 13:5 through 37. This passage is often interpreted as a prediction of the end time, but Marcus Borg and Dom Crossan in their book The Last Week believe Jesus' prediction came true sometime around 66 AD, when the Jewish people revolted against Roman rule. According to Borg and Crossan, at the climax of their conquest, Roman troops offered a sacrifice to the Roman emperor in the temple. The Jewish people suffered greatly. Many were massacred and all persecuted. Throughout history, there have been other events, such as the Holocaust and the recent shooting in the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, that caused great suffering for Jewish people. The potential for devastation for all people is always present. It doesn't really matter, though, whether we believe Jesus was predicting 66 AD or the end of all time. What does matter is that in the end there is hope. Jesus ended his discourse by telling the disciples that no one knows when the Son of Man will return, but we know he will return. No matter what we're going through right now around the world, there is hope when we place our trust in God.